We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, welcome everyone. This is the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hassani Pettiford, and I have with me
Jeff Witt.
and we're joining you from different locations. Jeff is in New Jersey. I am at an undisclosed location here in Atlanta, but we are joining you, and hopefully you're tuning in from all over the world. So we want to hear from you wherever you are dialing in from. Put your city, put your state, put your country. We want to acknowledge you. But listen, guys, we've been in a great series. We've been talking about becoming high value. We've been talking about the high value man. But I want to zone in today and really make it specific and directive to husbands, how to become a high value husband. But listen, folks, before we get started, as you know, we want you to click that button and like, share, and subscribe, because when you do that, you're sharing this message with your community, and that helps us in our algorithms to get the message out. And so listen, there's so many people who are going through, and they need somebody like you to really introduce this message to them so that it can cause a change and a transformation, not only in their lives, but in their marriages as well. So make sure you go ahead and do that. But this weekend, we had an amazing couple who drove all the way from, Tallahassee, Florida. And we did an intensive, and it was a transformational experience. Every couple is uniquely different in their story, in their approach, in the method that we take. And I want to get this show started by just sharing with you a quick testimonial, and then we'll dive into today's topic. So you're hearing from Michael and Amanda May. Check this out.
Hi, I'm Michael.
And I'm Mandy.
And we're from Florida. And we came to Couples Academy because we had, some issues that we were dealing with and trying to work through, and it was actually getting to the point where it wasn't too great. And coming here, we were able to work with Hassani and figure out what all the real problems were, really get to it at a deep level. Felt comfortable to do it. We never felt like it was like it's my fault or your fault. We talked about all the different things, worked through it together in an organic way, and now we have tool sets that we can utilize to communicate with one another. We know about our personality traits, which, by the way, the exam that we took with him, how do you feel about that?
It came out being spot on.
Hyper freaky, I would call it, about how spot on it was. So we learned a lot about that, about us in that regard.
I feel like it's been transformative in, I think, in personal, individual ways for both of us. And that little tiny piece of hope and promise is like
the size of a planet now.
Yeah, it's exponentially stronger.
We both feel very happy about it,
and
for sure.
I actually have a background in counseling and a background as a therapist myself, and I've seen many individuals and many couples go through traditional counseling, which usually looks like once a week for X number of weeks or X number of months. And I've even seen people do twice weekly. But this intensive, the 3-day weekend and everything that comes together is, leaps and bounds beyond what I think traditional weekly counseling could ever touch. There is really no way, I can't see that there's a better program in this entire country. Like this has to be the best in the country, if not the world.
There's no doubt about it in my mind. You had this background, and you know a lot about this stuff. We've gone through individual counseling. You know it as a career. We've looked up different things. We've watched different videos. There is no doubt in my mind, prior to coming here, is one reason we called this Honey, is we thought right off the bat that this was probably the best in the country. Mm-hmm. And now when we came here, I think it's easy to say it's probably the best in the planet. You know, mm-hmm. I think it's phenomenal. Nothing short of brilliant. Check your gut, talk to your spouse, make the plans, get on a plane, drive up here, whatever the case may be, and do it.
Wow. I mean, I don't even know what to say after a testimonial like that, but it just speaks to the passion and the desire and the hunger and the willingness and the skills that we have developed over the years to really give people what they need, because you're not just a number to us. We really want to create success stories in these couples, and I think we experienced that this weekend.
I think that's a tribute to how you've always, and I've known you for years, Asani, so I can truly say this, you've always looked at it from the holistic perspective. It's not just the situation that they're going through, but it's as a whole human being healthy in every aspect of life. And that true desire to be able to interact and create change. And you always tell it like it is. And sometimes in traditional therapy, there's a lot of reservation. They're sitting back and just listening and reflecting and being just a mirror. But sometimes it takes insight to make change, and you have to declare those insights. Otherwise, you don't get the results.
I appreciate that. Listen, guys, we're going to jump right into today's topic. But before we do, I just want to quickly announce those that are on. B. O'Neill, LaShawn, Anisha, good to see you, my sister, Kathy, Natalie, Michael, Fidelia, Torre, Olivia, Vashawn, Rick, JD Pruitt, the Yards Boys, Yvonne, Ken. Listen, Jewel, it's good to see you all. We're glad that you're chiming in from all over the world. We got Kenya, we got Texas, we got Minnesota. You guys are calling in from everywhere. But we're talking about the high value husband, and I wanted to bring Jeff Witt on. If you were with us on Friday, as you know, Friday is relationship Q&A, and we had our half of our team there, and we were all answering questions. And Jeff began to go into some particular areas that I said, let's come back on Monday. We're going to end this series, or this portion of the series, today. And there could be no other person to help me do that than Jeff. Jeff, I've known for many, many, many years. He's been working with men for over a decade now, really transforming their lives, not just here in the United States, but he has groups in Africa, groups in the Middle East, groups in Europe, and has been doing some amazing things. And now we are privileged to have him as a member of the team. And he is the individual who works with all of our men. So whether they're coming to us for marriage counseling, oftentimes we encourage men to do individual counseling as well. So Jeff, before we get into the conversation, I want to hear from you. Why do you think it's so important for men to get individual help as a man?
Well, if we look at it historically, all the way up through the 1800s, even the early 1900s, we always had the true father figure as a role model, where we would go out to work, whether it was a father or an uncle or someone, we would, as children, go out to work with them in the fields or in their trade, and we'd have that direct apprenticeship that showed us how to build a proper home. And life was a little more different back then. As this nuclear family has arisen since, say, the 1940s and beyond, where the husband goes out to work, may not come home till late at night, that father figure is no longer there. And if we look traditionally, going back into, doesn't matter where you go in the world, there was always some kind of rites of passage into becoming a man. And that is no longer present, except for in a few cultures that are still around. And what you find in those cultures that still have those rites of passage, there's a stronger home. And so there's a need for this, not just what you can learn in a book, but what can be taught man to man and woman to woman, in the case of women, on how to approach certain situations. And it takes a lot of research and study and work to understand how those systems work and evolved over time. And what we're trying to do now is bring that into the lives of men who don't have the father figure, or even if they had the father figure, did not show them how to be a proper husband, how to be a provider, how to defend and protect their families, and in any of the four quadrants: spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial, like we were discussing on Friday.
It's interesting you talk about a rites of passage, and when you go through a rites of passage, typically they grab males when they're much younger, when they're still impressionable, they can still be developed, and there is a particular system, I'm using that word specifically, a system and steps that you take in a very systematic way to get you to a final destination. And that process over the course of years develops you into the man that you become. But to your point, in this society and many societies around the world, there is no systematic approach, there is no methodology, there is no culture of manhood that's shaping and developing males to become men and then men to become husbands. And I read a book, it's called What Radical Husbands Do, and it says that the quality of a marriage is determined by the man. In essence, the man determines the quality of the marriage. Now, that's a very, very high responsibility that I would imagine many men don't embrace.
I would agree, but let's look at it historically. Well, the problem is we've delegated that manhood to. We're expecting that the teachers are doing it, right? You might get a little bit from your coaches in sports, but pretty much we've left it all and relegated all of that authority in the home to church but really what happens is entertainment, right? That's our babysitter 90% of the time, the video games, the music, the TV, the YouTube videos. So our children are learning and they're spending more time in that than they are actually spending with us as a man. So it's hard for them to pick up. They pick up all these bad habits, and part of the process is getting rid of those bad structures and implementing new good ones.
Absolutely. Listen, guys, what we're going to do is dive into what Jeff began to unpack on Thursday. But before we do that, we're going to go to this quick segment and we'll be right back. So grab your paper, grab your pens. He's going to go deep into a conversation that talks about what makes a husband a high value husband. Be right back. Check this out. All right, we're back. If you're just tuning in, this is the Couples Academy show. My name is Hassani, and we have our guest host with us today, Jeff Witt, who's one of our Couples Academy practitioners who works directly with men. Over the last week, we've been talking about a high-value man. It's become a topic that has become very trendy, right? It's all over the internet, but it's not a new concept. It's been around for quite some time. However, there are some new voices that have entered into the fold who, to me, have done a horrific job of unpacking what manhood is, what a husband is, defining what high value is. And I said, Jeff, come on, I gotta get you in here so we can have a conversation and really unpack for the people exactly what it is. And so we want to simplify this concept because we can go very deep. But Jeff, walk us through what high value is and how that shows up in the life of a husband.
So we can actually divide life as human beings into four quadrants. Those four quadrants are very, very simple. I call them the four securities. These are our security systems, and how we feel about ourselves in these are our security system in the world. The first one is spiritual. And when I say spiritual, we can look at it in a religious aspect, but, people have different faiths out there and different beliefs. Truthfully, it's just your sense of you, who you are in relation to the world and to your concept of God, nature, or whatever you want to consider that, who you are. That's your sense of self. And then your emotional, your ability to have an EQ, an emotional quotient, or the ability to govern your emotional states as opposed to being led by them, right? And then you also have the physical, which has to do with, fitness and food, and also our ability to protect ourselves and be that protector that we say as men we want to be. And then finally, financially. Now, when I say financial, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about the ability to create a safe environment, which in this society being capitalist, we can only create that through the use of money. So where we live, the type of home, car that we drive, the quality, we can build that certain quality of life around our ability to achieve our ambitions, our goals, our dreams, and whatever we conceive those as. So success in that quadrant. And you can define a high value man as one who can actually truthfully, when being honest with themselves, declare themselves as 8 or above in each of the following categories. Now, some of us are deficient in one or the other. And what we find is that if you have one strong security and you're in a relationship with someone who has stronger securities, you're going to have some difficulties because you need to work on yourself. If you have 2, you're going to find yourself, equally balanced, and you may have some problems, but you can probably still work through them. If you have 3, you're going to find that there's a stronger connection where the problems come up, but not as often. And if you're balanced in 4, the person you're with has got to be happy if they're being honest with themselves and if they've worked on themselves as well. So the ideal is that you'd have 4 strong securities in both the man and the woman.
Okay, so let's break this down. You're talking about 4 securities, or let's just say 4 quadrants. The first quadrant, there's the emotional security that you bring, there's the spiritual security, there's the physical security, and then there's the financial security. So that's 4 different areas of your life. And I find that to be really interesting because so many men approach relationships in a one-dimensional way. So they may be strong in one area, but if you peel that one layer back, their life is in shambles, right? Their relationship is in shambles. And I think that in society, we as men have defined manhood one-dimensionally. So either it's how much money you make, either it's how you can sex a woman, it's the amount of power that you have. And so all those other pieces, the inner man, let's say, are deficient and void, not in all, but in a lot of men. And those are the areas that help you to relate and to connect with a wife and with children in the confines of a home.
Yeah, and they're in a specific order too. I use spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial in that order because if we look, that's how we develop as human beings. First of all, our sense of who we are, right? And then we learn to balance our emotions as we get into the teenage years. And then we're also working on the fitness at the same time, right? Being active and learning how to actually participate. And then we learn how to go out into the world financially. And what happens is when they're off balance, and especially the first 2 quadrants, you can see some traumatic effects that spill over into every aspect of life. I can get into that if you want.
I mean, I no, you're absolutely right. In essence, what I hear you saying is, in order to be a good husband or a high value husband, you must first become a high value man. You can't play a role if you don't have the foundation for that role. And so when we talk about, like, for instance, I talk about all the time, there's 3 relationships we have, right? We have our relationship with God. That's our vertical relationship. We have our relationship with ourselves. That's our internal relationship. And then we have our relationship with our spouse, with our children. Those are our horizontal relationships. The reality is, if you don't have a healthy horizontal relationship and internal relationship, it could be because you don't have a good vertical relationship with God. And that's where you started off with the spiritual piece. And I think a lot of men have lost their way. They're not as spiritually connected. They don't know their true image, their self-identity. They're not wrapped and packaged in the nature that God developed within them. They've muted it. They've allowed so many things in society to knock them off course. I remember hearing somebody say that we engage in this world, we live a life of self-cancellation and self-denial, and truly don't know the true power that exists within us. We are temples, if you will, of God, and God is operating in us. And so in order to rise to the level that he's called us to, we've got to go inward. We've got to get lost within ourselves and find our source.
We've talked about what, but not why. I know you're getting ready to go to a break, but if you want to touch on that a little bit when we come back, that would be...
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for telling me that we need to go to a commercial break. We will do just that. Listen, I hope you're getting something out of this message. We have one more segment for you guys. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back. We're back. Hopefully you can hear us and there's no issues technologically. Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. Very good, guys. So, listen, we're talking about what I want to do is I want to jump into you kind of unpacking for the people, Jeff. What is the process that you take men through? So we get a discovery call. There's a man that's struggling in his marriage. He's on the brink of divorce. She's ready to leave. He realizes that there's some challenges that he's struggling with that has negatively impacted the marriage. He wants to become a better man, but just doesn't know how to do it. You're very disciplined in your approach. You're very regimented in your approach. You put them through a serious process. Kind of walk us through what that journey looks like for those who are considering seeking help, but not quite sure if it's the best fit for them.
So we live our life through a frame, the way we view the world, that lens. And so what I was trying to do is analyze and study the different frameworks for a living. And when a person approaches me at first, I need to understand where their frame is right now, what is going on. And so they can usually identify quickly when they're honest with themselves and with me, what the problems are. And this is something, Hassani, and you and I have worked on for a while. After we've identified these problems, we then look at the prospect of what life should be. And a lot of people don't have that written down or planned out of the ideal. So as you always call it, living your life by design and not default. The problems are the default. This is what's going on. Here's the design. And then what we do is we walk them through a process of building and understanding the frameworks that are how information is even received, just understanding the neuroscience behind why we make bad decisions and why we feel guilt and shame and blame afterwards, and how do we create a life that can be get slowly but surely build habits. We say it's an ancient saying, but it says your thoughts affect your words affect your actions affect your habits develop your character determines your destiny. So we work on the framework of how these thoughts are entering your mind and how we can now divide them and put them into a framework that allows us to live a purpose-driven life that actually comes out with the results that they want. A lot of these things are because we don't have that structure. A lot of the problems come in when we don't have that structure, and what you'll find up is there's a pent-up energy that wants to go build a business or wants to get a promotion or that wants to build a better house or wants to do things with their children. And because they don't have the frameworks in order to build that, they take that frustration and energy and look for something new outside of the realm because they have no outlet for their actual true ambitions, which would be to be a great husband and live this dream marriage that is absolutely possible. We've seen it. But because no one's given them the constructs and a system that they could use and resort to, we end up finding we fail.
So you're talking about frameworks, and I think that's good because a lot of men have been exposed to probably not pretty good models in their life, right? So they've seen dad or uncles or cousins or brothers or men from the block, be very promiscuous. They were ladies, men. In essence, they had their main woman and then they had their mistress on the side. Or maybe, interestingly enough, we've had a lot of men who come to us whose fathers and uncles were pimps. And so in that process, they have their own perception of what a woman is and what a man is and what those dynamics should look like. And even though consciously they realize, okay, this is probably not a good thing, subconsciously they're bringing those tendencies, those attitudes, those behaviors into their relationships and wondering why they just don't work. So in your framing process, I'm sure there's a process where you have to learn something. But in order to learn something, first you have to unlearn what you have learned and take on new beliefs, new attitudes, new patterns that will result in a new behavior or outcome. Is that correct?
And that begins with just understanding why we are the way we are. And a lot of it's because we live life through experience, through the five senses, like literally what we see, what we touch, what we taste, what we hear, what we smell. In a positive sense, if you smell grandma's cooking, and you loved grandma's cooking, that'll trigger a certain thought and transport you to a place in your mind, in your past, that said this was good. or maybe some of us have fond Christmas memories. So anything revolving around what we see around Christmas brings in those positive thoughts. Well, there's all these other ones that are affecting us. So these experiences through the five senses literally directly affect our thoughts. If we ponder anything for any period of time, that directly affects our emotions. And our emotions have a tendency, if left for a long period of time in a particular environment, to affect our sense of who we are. Well, the problem is that wasn't the way God intended it. That's in reverse. We have to reverse that polarity. We start simply with creating a good, strong sense of intention of who we are. Just like a football team gets together and rallies around the cry to go play hard at this game, they create this energy around who they are as a team. Well, you need to do that as yourself too. That will affect your emotional state. If we do this on a daily basis, that emotional state will affect our thoughts. And almost like magic, but not magic at all. We can create miracles in our lives just by learning how to see the world differently. If I walk into a home and it's a mess and it's all torn up, if I go in as just a human being, I'm like, oh my God, this place is a mess. But if I go as an investor, I'm going, wait a second, this has good bones. I can put a fireplace over here or beautiful countertops over there. And we learn to overlay what we can do with whatever our situation is, and work towards creating that possibility instead of just being completely controlled by the senses of what's actually there right now. And that's purpose driven. And that's
So you're talking about what goes into the eye gate, the ear gate, what goes into us in essence. Tell me, we have just 2 minutes left. What should the daily influences for any husband be who wants to stay on the straight and narrow, who wants to be faithful, who wants to honor, his wife? What should be the daily influences that kind of shape how one thinks, how one feels, how one behaves?
So once again, we need to stand guardian at the gateway of those five senses and check what we absorb. But really the work begins internally, and it's hard to do on your own. It's one of those things where if you have a high value person who understands these basic principles, they can teach you how to start with you in the morning, and you set the tone for your day. And you can do that through a very simple system, which sets the tone for who you are, sets the tone for your emotions, sets the tone for your thoughts, and gives you the purpose to start before those outside influences come in. When you have that system in place, I'm not saying it makes it perfect, but it makes it a lot easier.
So there's a book I read called The 5 O'Clock Club, and it talks about the importance of getting up before the sun, in essence, beating the sun, that those who are the most successful are actually up when most people are asleep, and they're spending time not for their boss, not working for their job, but they're spending time investing in themselves so that they can become the best version of themselves, so that they're more purposeful and intentional throughout the course of their day. So in essence,
23 hours for the world's chaos and misery. If you can't find the time, that's why a lot of us are 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30 a.m. people, is because you need that 1 hour for you so you can win before you ever even leave the house. You can win for you. And what that does is it upsets the balance of a chaotic world and gives you points on the board before you start the game.
Wow. Wow, guys, we're talking about the high value husband. I hope you're getting something out of this conversation that is really impactful for you to begin to implement into your life. This is Jeff Witt. He's one of our coaches. He does an amazing job transforming the lives of men and husbands who come through Couples Academy. So if you're considering working with someone, if you're considering getting help, set up a discovery call, reach out to us. We would love to help you to become the high value man that God has designed for you to be. Listen, guys, that's our show. We will see you in the morning. We're going to be transitioning into another great topic with Danielle, talking about the high value wife. Get it, guys. We'll see you in the morning. Love you. Take care.